Hello and welcome. Please put your hands together for your MC for the day, Tiam Rastegar.
Top of the morning to you all. Welcome to the Intermountain Technology and Leadership Conference. We have a full day packed for you with seminars, keynotes, and immersive experiences out there on our trade show floor. My name is Tiam Rastegar, and since you stuck with me, just a little bit about myself. I was born in Iran, raised in Germany. I've lived in Boise for 21 years. I graduated from Boise State both with my undergrad and my grad degree, so you can say that I bleed blue, which is a good thing. I now run Trailhead. We're a small nonprofit, 7 years old, and our mission is to help entrepreneurs succeed. We've launched over 50 startups and businesses. They, in turn, created over 400 jobs, raised $200 million, generated $350 million in revenue, and we're pretty proud of that. But enough about me and Trailhead. If you want to know more about our organization, we actually have a booth out there. My team is out there, ready to answer any questions you may have. We do have our fundraiser coming up in June, and we are putting on our largest event of the year, Boise Entrepreneur Week in October. Plenty of sponsorship opportunities and engagement opportunities there. Again, if you want to know more, go sync up with my team, and they'll tell you all about how to get involved with Trailhead. Like I said, enough about me. I want to get started pretty quickly here. We have a full packed schedule for you. But before we get started, I want to take care of some housekeeping items. First and foremost, IMTECH, aka the Intermountain Technology and Leadership Conference, wouldn't be possible today without the support of the title and the platinum sponsor. They got both, Fisher Technology. And I just wanted to ask all of you to give them a warm welcome and a warm thank you for making today's event possible. And we actually have Chris Taylor here from Fisher Technology. He's going to kind of christen the event this morning, get up on stage, and help us get things kicked off. So if I can ask Chris to come up.
Good morning. Welcome to IMTECH. 10 years ago, Fisher started what we called the Boise Tech Show. It was focused on technology, but also leadership and business principles, and had a blast with it. We grew out of Fisher's facility, moved to the Stickle Sky Center, and then took over the Owyhee Plaza, and then ended up here. We realized over the years, though, that much like companies trust us to do their IT services, and they outsource us, it's not their core, they outsource to professionals, we realized we're not event planners. So we've outsourced and partnered with IBL Events. They had their own tech show, and we merged this together to become, this is our first ever merged event. So welcome, thank you for being here. I hope the day goes well. So we're not event planners. Fisher's is an office technology company. We do managed IT and network services. We do managed print services through selling and servicing copiers and printers. We do hosted voice, managed voice solutions for business telephony and unified communications, and we do managed document management solutions. It's what we do, what we believe in, and if you attend my seminar later, you'll hear a lot of this. We believe people and culture make organizations. We've got 160 fantastic people at Fisher's, 11 locations in 4 states, and growing, and it's all about the amazing people. So I do have a seminar later on the cultural transformation of our company over the last 15 years and some of the things we've done at Fisher's in the areas of people and culture. So if you're interested, attend that. And meet our people. Get around, and we've got a lot of Fisher's people around here. So with that, please enjoy the day. And I think I turn it back over to Tiam for now, but you'll hear from me shortly. So thank you so much. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, Chris. I got a couple of housekeeping items to wrap up this intro for myself here. I'm going to talk to you about the app. We're going to talk about the schedule real briefly. And then we're going to do one of my favorite things ever. We're going to give away a giant check. The check itself is decent, but the size is giant. You get what I'm saying. So let's talk about the best way to experience the conference today. It is through this app. This app is powered by Lingo, one of the most engaging platforms that we could find for this conference. Better yet, they're located right here in the Treasure Valley, so they're a local company. Please go ahead and scan this with your phone. Just pull out your camera. The QR code is also in your program. Again, it's the best way of making sense of everything I'm about to cover for you because it's going to go pretty fast and we're going to cover the entirety of the day. That said, we will kick off our morning with the keynote titled The Escalating Global Military Conflict and Its Impact on You as Cybercrime is Unleashed. It's obvious why I had to read that. It was fairly long. And Patrick Beggs will give that keynote, and it's going to start in just a few minutes here. Right after the keynote, we then have our first seminar starting at 10:15, and we have an awesome lineup. We're going to cover topics such as leadership, NFTs, have my own personal opinion on those, happy to talk to you about that, SharePoint, cybersecurity, and more. Again, the best way to you to schedule your own day is through the app, so make sure you download it. Right after our first seminar, we're going to go into our second seminar of the day, starting at 11:30. Another great lineup, 5 amazing speakers, and our artificial intelligence panel right here on main stage, presented by the Idaho Technology Council. I wanted to also point out that immediately following the second seminar, we're going to invite you to head to our exhibit hall. There are 40 of the best tech companies from the Pacific Northwest located right next door. So make sure you hit the floor, you spend a lot of time on the floor, and you talk to our exhibitors. Immediately then, after you talk to the exhibitors, you have the chance to participate in an immersive 360 virtual reality demo presented by 360 Immersive. And while you may think virtual reality is just for your kids at home with the headset, VR goes way beyond that. I myself happen to sit on a nonprofit board called AXRI. They develop VR application for kids who are neuroatypical and on the spectrum. And we do, thank you for that. And we focus on occupational training simulation for young adults. So make sure you take advantage of the 360 immersive opportunity with VR. Probably the most important part of the day for me is lunch, 12:30 to 2. Food tends to drive my day. Make sure that you get one of the lunch tickets, and we'll see you there from 12:30 to 2. And right after lunch, we're going to come back for our third seminar session. We're going to finish strong. We got more topics like robotics, data security, R&D tax credits, creating possibilities, and please don't forget about the STEM workforce development panel. Lastly, then, we'll finish our speaker lineup with our closing keynote right here on main stage at 3:30. We will hear from Perry Lee, and he's the Director of Architecture for Microsoft. His keynote is titled, "What Happened to My Flying Car I Was Promised?" And I promise you, you do not want to miss this. I was here yesterday when we did the stage walkthrough and the dry run, and he was going through his slides. You're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be great. Spoiler, though, he doesn't have flying cars on hand for you, so just wanted to make sure to set the expectation there. But this wouldn't be a conference if we didn't have giveaway prizes. The best way, well, the only way for you to win these is really through the app. You get my point. I'm really trying to push all of you to download the app and experience this conference best way possible. I myself could go for those Sony wireless noise-canceling headphones. Got 2 teenagers at home. Don't have to say anything more than that. You get my drift. But please make sure you register for that, and then the winners will be announced, as it says, from 4:30 to 5 in the exhibit hall. And I want to make sure we stay on track here, do well on time. Once again, this conference wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors. I'm going to read out a few of them. I run a nonprofit. Our work heavily depends on sponsors. So our platinum sponsors, as I said, Fisher Technology, thank you so much. We have a gold sponsor, ConnectWise. Silver sponsors, there's a few of them. We have Strategic Tax Solution, Lingo, who powers the app, IGTG, and IMTECH. Jeet is here this morning. Great to see you, front row. For the bronze sponsors, we have GCSIT, Rubrik, CompuNet, Scale, Canon, and Gravis Law. And lastly, our community sponsors, yours truly, Trailhead, we're one of them, the Idaho Technology Council, KBOI, and one of my favorite local organizations here, the Idaho STEM Action Center. And since they're one of my favorite organizations, let's talk about them for a little bit. IMTECH chose the STEM Action Center as our charity of choice today, and we're going to be presenting them with a check. A little bit about the STEM Action Center, and we have Dr. Caitlin McGuire here this morning as well. Second row, didn't get here as early as Jeet did. But the Idaho STEM Action Center, in essence, they create and support STEM learning opportunities. And they do that through statewide K-12 student programs, including STEM competitions. They help educators develop in professional ways. They place them in actual businesses. I saw one educator do that over the summer, and they were helping out with the Weather Channel. That was pretty impressive. Never thought I'd see a teacher do that. But they also partner with Idaho companies and their employees. And there's different ways that you can work with the Idaho STEM Action Center. You can sponsor a student or an educator program. You can volunteer at a STEM competition. Or you can open your place of business for one of these amazing teachers to come and do an externship during the summer. I'm going to invite Chris Taylor up one more time to help me present the check. And as he's making his way up, Dr. Caitlin McGuire, if you'd be so kind and join us. Don't have to twist your arm to get this check, do I? Hello. All right. We are presenting $3,000 to the Idaho STEM Action Center.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work you do. Yes, you can.
Yeah, take it, yeah.
Now, I suggest something, and Chris, if you want to just stay up here with me, take it to the bank and try to cash it. And make a TikTok of it. You might want to call the manager in advance and be like, hey, I'm about to pull a prank. You're going to show up with a giant check. But yeah, tellers love them, so. And Chris, you're going to introduce our keynote, so I'm just going to leave the stage to you.
Perfect, thank you.
You got it.
Earlier I mentioned the importance of people and culture in making great organizations. On top of that, great partners make great organizations. We have a fantastic partner at Fisher's in our IT business of ConnectWise. Fantastic partners, and one of the things they do with us and for us is provide amazing speakers to our industry events and events like this. So I want to thank ConnectWise for bringing Patrick Beggs to us today. Patrick is the Chief Information Security Officer for ConnectWise, for cybersecurity globally for ConnectWise. He spent 20 plus years in information security, spanning commercial, federal, civilian, defense, law enforcement, and intelligence communities. Patrick served as the Cognizant Technologies Global Cyber Operations Executive, leading a team of more than 150 people operating across 5 countries. He led cyber operations for AIG, for Booz Allen Hamilton, for Amazon Web Services, and for Bank of America. He served as the first Director of Operations at the Department of Homeland Security, National Cybersecurity and Communication Integration Center. He also has lots of government secrets. I tried to get them out of him last night, and he did not budge. I did learn, though, that Patrick did, in a social engineering exercise, pose as a copier technician. So yet another connection to Fisher. So it's my sincere pleasure, and I can't wait to hear from Patrick Beggs. So please welcome Patrick to the stage.
Thank you. Chris, can't thank you enough. And I'm a walker and talker, but for the first part of this presentation, I got some really good notes that if I don't refer to them, I will mess it up. And I don't want to do that. I want to give you guys the best experience possible for this event. But first of all, again, thank you very much for the hospitality. All right, hopefully I get it right. I've never been to Boise. Did I say it right? No? So I'm from Northern Virginia, which means I'm from nowhere. There's people, no one is from the Washington, D.C. area, so we don't really have accent proclivities or anything like that. But anyways, I flew in here, and Chris and his team have been just amazing hosts. I got to see the blue. Did I get that right? I actually got pictures of that. My teenage boys were extremely upset. I posted that on my Instagram story without sending it to them first. And of course, all their friends saw it. But anyways, I got the opportunity to sit with Chris's team at Fisher yesterday afternoon for several hours. And really, it was just a kind of roll your sleeves up, just discussion on information security, physical security, just you name it, how they are approaching it, some perspectives from my background, which you're going to hear a lot here today. It doesn't make it the right way. It's just a way that it has been done, and I believe is, at a core is foundationally strong. But just really was inspired about kind of how seriously they're taking cybersecurity, and with their partners and their customers really going to the next level of really having that on their mindset. And you'll hear me talk about it, security first mindset. And I know a lot of you in this room probably maybe you don't do IT for a living, you don't do cybersecurity for a living, but if we can walk away today with just a little bit more of an edge about it, right? Who in here has teenagers? Yeah, you have threats all over the place. I'm not kidding, right? And I serve a number of local boards, and just I educate a lot of it. It's around athletics in my community, and I educate a lot of the athletes, guys and gals, about just safe practices online. There's some really crazy. Talk to me after this. Some really crazy trends right now, especially on Instagram. If your kids are getting, if they're getting friend requests from people they don't know but are just similar in age, obviously you probably have that talk with them. But there's some pretty crazy scams going on right now, and they're being done by actual local kids in their community. It's not bullying. It's exploiting, and it's blackmailing, literally. I can't say that enough. It's something has popped up in the past. It's a viral thing on TikTok they're talking about. So I know you guys, teenagers, probably understand that. Before we jump in, Chris gave a good kind of great description of my background. It kind of makes me feel old doing this for the past 20-some years. Right after, I'll give you kind of a quick timeline. Right after high school, I joined the military. I was in the Army. I had nothing to do with IT, information security. I was light infantry, long-range surveillance. I kicked doors in and blew things up. But throughout my career, some of the things I've learned from that job and that role for a number of years has really stayed with me. But also I've been a big proponent of veteran support, of veteran programs, and veteran hiring. So I'm going to embarrass anybody in here right now. If you're a veteran, please stand up real quick. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Important to me. So, yeah, thanks a lot. All right, we'll jump into this. And the title that was marketed it's pretty serious. It's kind of scares me a little bit, right? I've only been at ConnectWise 2 months, and it's been an amazing journey. And Chris talked about culture, and that's what drew me to ConnectWise. They're a pretty decent sized company for what they do. About 4,000 employees across the world. They're privately owned, but they're one of the leaders in their market for MSP technology. And MSP technology can be in a number of different things that they offer. But one of the more critical things they offer is, if you're a managed service provider and you have a dental office chain of 2,000 computers, right? A lot of what they do is they use our products for remote management, right? And you can imagine, right? Remote management is kind of something that is important. If it was taken over, that's kind of bad, right? Somebody, if they got into the remote management software of your dental practice, they don't need to take over one computer. They just took over them all, right? So security is obviously a big mindset at ConnectWise, and I just want to do right by them. I'll be honest with you, the opportunity that I've been given there and the team, it's just been amazing. So we could jump into this. Next slide, please. Oh, I've got my thing right here. Never mind. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to shake some trees a little bit. Obviously, it's topical right now, what's going on in the world, right? Talk about kind of the Russian cyber threat overview, okay? I'm sure everyone has been inundated with this if you're watching the news, not necessarily on the cyber side, but of course, what's going on with the war. It's not a conflict, it's a war in Ukraine right now. But I'm going to kind of tie together some of the stuff that's been going on, not necessarily behind the scenes, but what's been actively going on leading up to that conflict. Next, it's not marketing at all, but it's really our ConnectWise, it's our threat report. And it really ties in to kind of the setting the stage of what I'm going to talk about with what's going on with Russia and the global kind of cyber movement, cyber threats that are going on. And I have to, because I'm a practitioner, I cannot finish without just giving some folks how do you protect yourself? How can you talk to your stakeholders, talk to some of your customers and partners about better ways to protect yourself? I know it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but I'm going to try to tie some use cases and some fun stories that most of it through mistakes over the years that I've learned on how not to do things. All right, we'll get into it. Russia, cyber, bad, right? It's bad. So, I'm sure folks have heard of ransomware? Raise your hand. Yes, good, yes, okay, good. So you guys understand like the basics of what ransomware is, right? Ransomware is when some bad person takes over your computer, locks it up, you can't get into it, you get a message, right? And it says, hey, if you want access to your computer or computers, you're gonna pay us, you're a small business, you're probably gonna have to pay about $20,000 in Bitcoin, right, to this wallet, right? And once you pay, right, you get your information back, right? That's ransomware. That is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. It's the recruitment, the tool production for it is it's commercialized, right? It is a thriving business, right? Ransomware is down right now, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about why. But as you see up here, the different, I've kind of laid out the different Russian state players that work from a nation-state standpoint. Russia maintains numerous units, as you can see up here, and I'll kind of do a highlight of each of the individual ones. They don't talk to each other very well. They're very disjointed. If you've done any Russian studies, they are very compartmentalized country. Their culture is very compartmentalized. They keep secrets from each other. There's an enormous hierarchical kind of, we'll say, I don't know, a hierarchical kind of power authority, as folks probably understand in Russia. But that bleeds into their government agencies and how they operate their government agencies. And more often than not, and I'll talk a little bit about some of my government days, is we would see these 3 different units that you see up there, the SVR, the FSB, and the GRU. We would actually see them fighting each other on targets, right? Because they didn't know that they were both, we'll just say for an example, attacking a US electrical power plant, right? On their business system size. And we would see what we call indicators from these different units, right? We DNA'd them, we know who they are over the years, right? They use the same type of signatures and the same activity and all that good stuff. And we would see them knocking heads, which is kind of funny actually. I mean, it was badness, but to see that they were both attacking at the same time. And it's because they don't talk to each other. It's because there's such a level of bureaucracy and compartmentalization. Some say that's a good thing because of, there's no single head to cut off because the other one will maintain. But to that point, right? It really does. Chaos can be very harmful, and it's hard to fight chaos. It's hard to fight, from the U.S. base, right? Of how they fight in cyberspace. It does make it very challenging. Russia has a number. I mean, it's from a state-sponsored view. They do denial of service attacks. Denial of service attacks is when you flood an infrastructure, a network with multiple requests for, say, a web page, right? But we're talking millions of requests within minutes or within seconds. And it basically shuts that down. And we'll talk a little bit about how they did that to Ukraine. They infiltrate networks for passive surveillance and intelligence, right? Up here, there's the equivalent of our own FBI, there's the equivalent of our own CIA, and the equivalent of our own NSA. They have the same type of missions and the approaches and what they're doing. So, on the more of the NSA side of the house, they want that is more kind of an active, what their equivalent is very, very active, very powerful, if you will, right? They do have their own FBI versions, right? Which is on the SVR. They want, they're trying to collect information against their own folks, but they're also very opportunistic in what and how they're doing things, right? Again, I could do history lessons of how and what they've done, but you hear about the ransomware attacks that have been happening. We'll get into that. It says 80% of them that we can attribute bad actors to come from Eastern Bloc countries, right? And the problem is when these folks are doing this from a nation-state place, or we'll say an opportunistic place, cybercrime place, it's hard to know who's doing what. It's because these folks either are doing it on their own, they used to be doing it for the government, and now they're doing it on their own, but they're using the same tools and techniques, right? So it makes it, it makes it extremely, from an attribution standpoint, hard sometimes to disseminate who it is. But does it matter in the private sector? No, you just want the pain to stop, right? And that's a big thing from coming from the government to the private sector. Folks, I would have presidents of companies saying, "Oh, you know who this is," and I'm like, "It doesn't matter who it is. We just need to stop it," right? So folks get a little bit wrapped around the edges on who it is. But no single Russian security or intelligence agency has the one responsibility for cyber. They're all, again, they're kind of it's a bit of a Wild West on how they do things. They do their tactics are denying service. They do a lot of intelligence collection. Again, they just want to know what we're up to, what other countries are up to, from kind of just us sitting and listening. And they do that by taking over computers and taking over systems, not necessarily taking over, but getting embedded in them. It's very similar to how the U.S. conducts cyber operations, right? You don't really know a whole lot about how NSA does things because their job is to not be found and not to be understood of what they're doing. It's sitting, watching, learning, and retaining information and using it for their own good. We could talk a little bit about the GRU. It's Russia's military intelligence. It's more notorious for damaging operations, right? They're not the smartest. They go out and do more destructive things. Again, it's not something that that we would, as a country, would know that they're doing, right? It's more, it's like what they're doing right now is what they did against Ukraine is they're deploying what's called wiper malware. And wiper malware looks like ransomware, right? It actually pops up like ransomware. Your computers have been taken over, right? And then after a certain amount of time, your data's gone. Your computers are completely unavailable. So it's just basically kind of a middle finger saying, listen, we just don't want this computer system to operate. And they did that extensively in Ukraine before they launched physical conventional warfare attacks. So the U.S. we have these folks mapped out. We know the players in these different groups, right? The U.S. has actually, Department of Justice has launched some indictments to several active military officers within the SVR and the GRU. I don't think there's going to be any arrests anytime soon, but the point is that we're kind of coming out of the shadows with identifying who these folks are and why they're doing it. And in Patrick's opinion, and more than just Patrick's opinion, the U.S. needs to be able to show our capabilities as well, as they're brazen about their capabilities. They brag about them. They will deny it at Putin's level, at the highest level. Of course, they don't conduct cyber operations against anybody. Tell us more lies. But the U.S. needs to, in my opinion, the capabilities we have blow them away. They're just, it's so much more powerful. And I think it's coming to a time, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, that we're going to have to show what we can do. We do it all the time. Folks don't see it. But to be able to say, listen, the way things are escalating right now, especially with the sanctions, we'll talk about that a little bit, that, I talk to a lot of my friends that are still in the government and they feel the same way, that it's time to really kind of show our muscle and to demonstrate, and to give kind of our own country some assurance that they're on top of it, right? That we're not just sitting here taking punches all the time, which is somewhat of the impression sometimes. And by the way, if somebody has any questions during this, I'm more of a crowdsourcing type of interaction, town hall. So if anybody has any questions, and if I don't know the answer, somebody in here might. So please don't be shy about that. I know that most folks won't, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. The GRU as well, this probably will sound familiar, was responsible for infiltrating the Hillary Clinton's, the Democratic email system, right, that was attributed back to them. Some of the attacks on the 2016 last election as well. So they're very focused on our election infrastructure from a social media standpoint as well, with bot creations to influence. I'm not going to get political here, but to influence one party or another to what is their advantage. So from a social media standpoint, a lot of Facebook and Twitter have done, obviously folks probably understand all this, have done a lot to try to thwart that and try to understand who is who, and to really fight against disinformation. Sometimes, sometimes a little too far, right? So unfortunately it's hard to know what is the truth sometimes out there with that. But their job on the GRU side of the house, it's pretty hardcore. Their job, it is the former KGB, so kind of put it in that terms, is they are the bigger muscle for what's going on, and they were the first ones really launching attacks against Ukraine before cyber attacks against Ukraine, denial of service attacks, taking over critical infrastructure in Ukraine, and I'll get to a timeline, I believe, next. Yes. So taking over critical infrastructure and attacking critical infrastructure in Ukraine. Any veterans in here that know that know conventional warfare, right? Even as back as Vietnam area, or even before that, right? You want to knock out your adversaries' communications, right? You want to so they cannot talk to each other. Oh, did I have a timer go? Okay, so they cannot talk to each other. It's essential. You gotta take the lights out. You gotta stop water. You gotta stop essential functions and really affect the civilian world, right? Make their life hard, make them scared. And that's essentially what was going on in January and February, into late February, the different groups that were very active, right? Luckily, Ukraine, being in the Eastern Bloc, has some pretty good units themselves. And then we started seeing them fight back. And it was really, I get kind of goosebumps thinking about it. They fought back pretty darn good. And then they kind of turned the tides on Russia a little bit. On some of the stuff that we were seeing them doing, which was really great to see. That especially, and it bleeds into how they're fighting the war right now, right? I think Russia thought it was just going to be a bulldoze over, but on the cyber side, they did an amazing job of recovering from some of these denial of service attacks. Now, let's be honest. I think we know that there was some Western help, right, with that as well. But the initial capabilities that we know Ukraine has is pretty advanced. A lot of those folks came from Russia. And a lot of the units that I have talked about have, they were raised in those units and understand, the adversary that they were facing. So that was really to an advantage of them. They got a lot of their stuff back online, but unfortunately, what Russia started doing was just bombing the heck out of it, right? They said, screw cyber. Let's start hitting critical infrastructure, nuclear infrastructure. Obviously, taking the nuclear power plants. But again, what their main goal was to cause fear, right? Take out internet infrastructure, which actually they didn't do that good of a job. I mean, folks were watching the news, you're seeing folks walking around with their phones, you're seeing tons of footage. They haven't taken out, cellular infrastructure per se in certain parts of Ukraine. Obviously, some of the more active war spots, they've done a good job of it. But it is that cyber physical nexus that's going on right there. Remember, earlier I started talking, right? I said ransomware is down right now. Anybody want to know why? Right? Because they're spending all the folks that are doing the criminal groups, who do you think they're working for right now, right? So it's a call to action, right? It's kind of a National Guard Reserve call-up of cyber actors, right? It's not extreme down, but it is down from what, unfortunately, a lot of folks don't report that they were hit with ransomware, right? And that they paid the ransom. I think the stats are right now, 80 to 90% of companies that get hit with ransomware pay. Why? Because it's the only way to get your data back. These things are encrypted. It's impossible to break this encryption. Sometimes, lazier cyber actors, criminal actors, will use a ransomware variant that we already, or some security firms already have the keys to, and that's good. I mean, it's the best good you could get out of that situation. So what they'll do is, they'll already have that decryption key, and they'll come in and they'll rebuild their systems and obviously protect against how the actors got in there in the first place. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But point being is, right now, a lot of the cyber criminal groups, there's been a call to action for them to raise arms and protect Russia, and also to fight back in the Ukrainian conflict. This is what I like. This is one part. So these actor groups, obviously, they have their own PR firms. They do, I swear to God. Conti is one of the groups, one of the cyber criminal groups, right? It's very formalized. They have their own infrastructure. They have their own marketplace where they sell their tools to anyone on the dark web that wants to, that either wants, ransomware as a service, right? So think about it. It's like cloud services, right? Directed denial service as a service. They'll do this for you, right? So it literally is like an Amazon marketplace out there. But they, Conti News, they put out there, they're like, listen, right? We got Russia's back on this, obviously. That's not a surprise, right? But what we did like was, if folks can remember kind of the Occupy Wall Street days, Anonymous, right? They actually came out, and as you could see, they listed the companies that were still operating, in Russia, right? And basically said, get out of there or we're going to hurt you from a cyber standpoint. And actually they did some of them. And, you know, I guess I should be careful, but that's, I mean, it was nice to see that because it was an adversary group that for a long time was causing harm to, you know, I was in the banking and finance sector for years, and we had some challenges, obviously, after, you know, with Too Big to Fail and Occupy Wall Street. These folks were actually hitting us pretty hard. Fun side story, I ran Bank of America's strategic cyber threat intelligence group. I hired a lot of veterans. I hired, you know, folks that came out of NSA, out of the Department of Defense, you know, you name it. Really, really great young, you know, smart people. I won't say the name. One of my folks, again, he was a former Navy guy, had worked at Fort Meade up at NSA for a long time, and did amazing stuff for us. Ran one of our red teams, which is our internal team that was charged with breaking into our own networks, right? You know, you want to break into your own networks before anybody else does and learn, you know, talk about the, you know, the weak points, right? If you want to break into your house, right? That analogy, right? You want to know where you should put security or cameras in your house, and that was his job. Found out years later, he was a part of Anonymous. Right? He was good at his job though. So I was like, whatever, man. I was like, we actually had a beer years later after I left Bank of America, and I was like, man, I said, I mean, there's no way I could have vetted him, right? So I was in the government, we weren't doing polygraphs, right? But he always did his job, and he did his job well. I'm sure, I mean, the information he probably was gleaning was, you know, to the advantage of Anonymous. But anyways, they've kind of taken a turn. It's interesting to see how they've matured, right? They were much younger 10, 12 years ago. And kind of, you know, what they're up to now is really, it's a lot of social causes, right? And it's obviously humanitarian in this aspect. So I thought that was kind of cool. Well, it would have been cool if I had found that out when I was working at Bank of America. But so trust me. Ironically, after I ran their threat intelligence strategic unit, I stood up their global insider threat group. And if we were looking for that type of behavior, I always wonder if we would have found him or not. And that would have been a real awkward conversation with my leadership saying, oh, you hired the guy? Yeah. But he was really good. So won't say the name. So he's actually very open about it right now, and is on the speaking circuit and consulting circuit. He actually is making quite a nice bit of money from that as well, because it's okay to talk about that stuff now. Like what topics I'm talking about right now, I wouldn't have talked about 10 years ago. No freaking way. It was just because it was only really operated in on the government space. When I left the government, I went to Bank of America, I still retained my TSSCI clearance. I did that because I worked in one of the largest banks in the world, right? And they wanted to share information with us about things that they were seeing that no one else was seeing. And that's the problem, right? Is the information was being held so tightly, and private sector organizations weren't getting access to it. And that made it really hard back in, we'll say, 2008 through 2012 to 2015. DHS's organization called CISA. Has everybody heard of CISA? Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of CISA, so that's one of my claim to fames, either good or bad. But you know, the information sharing that they do now and the services that they offer U.S. critical infrastructure owner-operators, and believe it or not, everybody in this room is part of a piece of U.S. critical infrastructure. But what they're doing now is they've come out of that shadow, kind of what I described, and they said, you know, we got to start talking more real talk about these these types of conversations and about the vigilance that needs to be happening, because it's still going on, and their techniques, their capabilities of the groups I talked about are much better than most of us in the private sector, and I'll say that. Their capabilities are good, right? The fight is, it's not necessarily if you get hacked. A lot of the times, and this is not an uncommon statement, it's when it happens. And it's either, the goal is to lose small, not lose big. But what's going on right now outside of Ukraine is my Putin picture. I'm sure I'm going to be probably compromised after putting Vladimir Putin's picture on one of my slides, but so with this thumbs up. This is not new news of what some of the targets are against. And if anybody saw the 60-minute special last week, some of my good friends were on that, talking about very recent campaigns. Now, this was before Ukraine that was happening. They are really getting good and really getting very focused on on the power grid right now. And it's not necessarily the business systems of power grids, right? It's the actual industrial control systems, the relay systems that run our power grid. They used those tactics to shut the power off in Ukraine. It was successful. They got back up, but the capability is there, right? If we, God forbid, if things start escalating and there starts to be more of a direct U.S.-Russia type of conflict, this is what's going to happen first, right? And this is what they're going after. Rest assured, goes back to my statement, the U.S. will show what their capabilities are if that does happen. And Russia's going to really feel it. Trust me. So, but it's about de-escalation, right? What would happen after something serious, right? God forbid that would be, hopefully, conventional warfare could happen after that. So they have to be. It's just so delicate right now of what's going on in cyberspace, because what could happen next, right? So they're being really, definitely very, very careful. But the takeaway on this is, we used to talk about China. That was the adversary I fought when I was in the government. That was my main focus, was China. They're still there, right? China is not disruptive though, right? They just want to know, they just want information, just like we do, right? It's more of a mutual respect in a sense of what goes on with China. And I would think if Russia just had better leadership, more maturity in their processes, procedures, and how they have deployed technology, they would be the same way. But unfortunately, it's a culture of fear there, and it talks about the different units attacking the same things at the same time. So now which bleeds into kind of our threat report that we do every year. Again, I'm new to ConnectWise, so I had no part in this, but what a lot of their findings, a lot of the stuff, were observations I was seeing, especially at my last company at Cognizant. It's a global IT provider, one of the biggest ones in the world, 300,000 employees, all over 26 countries, something like that. So a lot of the stuff that we were seeing, and if anybody knows, Cognizant, now this was before I got there, was hit with a massive ransomware attack. That's one of the reasons I actually came there, is to help them recover and get to a point where that wouldn't happen again. And that happened in 2020. But what really has kind of really woken up the country, if you remember the Colonial Pipeline, everybody remember that Colonial Pipeline attack? JB Foods, does everyone remember that, right? Why? This is kind of a funny joke. Why did that? It really kind of woke up U.S. awareness to this stuff. And if folks remember, people were just trying to suck up gas like it was crazy. On the Colonial Pipeline attack, their industrial control systems that managed the gas flow were not affected. It was their business systems, right? It was it was how they ran their businesses. But did those systems have interconnection to their industrial control systems? Anybody? Yes, they did. So that's what really raised that awareness, and that really, folks didn't really understand what was going on. They just knew that one of our pipelines was attacked, and they were worried about running out of gas, right? So same thing happened with I think it's JB Foods, right? Price of meat went through the roof. So my joke is, attack our gas, attack our hot dogs all around 4th of July, the U.S. is gonna get pissed off, right? No, that's what happened, right? Is that what it took for, I've been doing this 20 years, I just had to hit hot dogs and gas? Would have launched it myself. But a lot of attention now and awareness, and it's good awareness now, because I think folks are a lot more vigilant after that, and they've kind of woke up to the fact that this is going on. Kaseya is one of our, I would say, competitors. One of the companies in our world got hit last July, right? And let me tell you, I felt for him, right? I wasn't working for ConnectWise then, and it's not one of those things where I don't wish bad on anybody. I mean, I don't. Like that sucks. I've been through it, right? And they came out, they came out strong from it. But they were targeting that company because they ran remote management software, like I talked, right? And that's a big deal. Like taking over something like that, being able to attack, being able to have the keys to the kingdom of 100,000 endpoints across different sectors, right, is a big deal. I kind of talked about the awareness really just kind of jumped up after some of the bigger attacks that have been happening, right? JBS Foods, Colonial Pipeline, sanctions, thank God, have started happening, right? That's a big thing. Cyber attacks is now an act of terrorism, right? We fought for that for years and years in both administrations in the 2000s. And we just didn't have enough contextual examples of how the badness that would happen. I used to run incident response teams to owners and operators of critical infrastructure, and we would send folks out. They would call us up. They were like, our computers are doing something wrong, right? And these were private sector companies, and we'd send government teams out, and we would collect the information. We'd come back, and we're like, these are the same actors that were fighting on the classified government networks, and that was the big aha moment back in 2005, 2006. And that's where it really started kind of growing, and the understanding and the information sharing had to start happening because of these types of things. More observations. Look at that. Last year, predictions, right? 700 million ransomware attacks will happen by the end of 2021. I mean, unbelievable. So one of the larger ransomware groups, Rival, however you want to say it, that has been very, very profitable. I would say that I think they've, in the hundreds of millions of dollars of successful ransomware attacks, they disappeared, gone, right? That was unheard of, right? There's a lot of speculation of how and what happened to them. But I think the price of doing business just got too high. I would have to guess that some of the government agencies were being a little more not passive on those types of on their infrastructure that they're using to launch attacks. I don't know. You guys probably can guess what happened, but that was a good win for the U.S. So. Getting some data, not the most exciting stuff, but by quarter, right? Talking about something like 500 cybersecurity incidents just from our partners, our customers, right? That's a lot, right? 40% as I talked to were related to ransomware. When I say Exchange, that's your Microsoft mail, right? And if you're an IT operator in here and you have your mail systems, what I call on-prem, on your infrastructure in your own servers, please get it off that. Move it to the cloud. You will eliminate a lot of risk. Coin miners, right? We're going to talk about NFTs, right? God, I wish I had bought Bitcoin mining machines 10 years ago. Oh my gosh. My 17-year-old keeps asking me if we could do it in my house. I'm like, no, we're not doing it in my house. One of the companies that we acquired when I was at Cognizant, one of the benefits from those companies, you could use your personal computers for Bitcoin mining, which I just shook my head when I saw this. When we were reading the M&A agreement, I was like, whoa, that's going to stop. But a lot of it, yeah, where people are taking over computers and just using them for Bitcoin mining. Why buy your own infrastructure where you could just infect somebody else's and make a lot of money off of it? That's a big business, actually. So, let's see. This is MSP marketing crap, and I'm not going to make you guys look at that. So, so get more into predictions, right? Small and medium business market, right, is just growing. It's growing like crazy, right? I think we are seeing more attention to the small and medium businesses. They weren't really viable targets because of their size, but as you see, one of the larger, hacking groups got knocked off or they went quiet, right? It's because they poked the bear, right? They started hitting some of the bigger companies, and now we're starting to see smaller kind of up-and-comers that aren't that greedy, right? It's something like, what's your business model? If you can make $10,000 a hit, right, versus getting a lot of attention. Because these small and medium businesses aren't making the New York Times or the Washington Post or the LA Times, right? They're just getting hit. They're calling someone for help. They're either just rebuilding their systems. Some do pay, right? And it's a volume business for these actors, and they just rinse and repeat. They rinse and repeat. They do vulnerability scans. They're not necessarily targeting your business, but they're doing large internet vulnerability scans on different infrastructure and looking for holes. That's all they do. And it's constant. Runs all day, all night. As I said, trying to stay under the radar because one of the biggest groups just disappeared, right? And that was, again, a really big thing for us. What's going on right now in Russia and Ukraine has been a good thing so far, right now. It hasn't stopped the threat, but some of the larger, more painful and more successful actors have kind of, obviously changed what they're up to, so. All right, I have to talk about a little bit of, just good hygiene. I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't going to sit here and kind of hopefully not bore you folks with some best practices and things you have to be doing, right? An executive order did come out, right? they're starting to get a lot more serious at the government level for cyber reporting, right? Anybody here have cyber insurance? Understand cyber insurance, right? How expensive is that getting, right? Yeah. What's that? So, and it's because of, I believe it's because on the, I worked for AIG, we offered cyber insurance, and we were constantly educating the what do you call the folks, the actuaries, right, on what real risk was, right? Because all they were understanding was just, it was very black and white type of risk of, it's kind of like car insurance. You have 6 teenagers on your insurance policy, it's gonna be kind of expensive. If you got a small or medium or large business that just doesn't have good cyber capabilities or practices, you're going to pay more because you're obviously more of a target. Federal government's kind of getting on top of that. Hopefully they move to more of an incentive to protect yourself versus, sanctions against you, hitting with fines and whatnot. So, this is more geared towards MSPs, but it could be towards, really any small or medium business. It doesn't matter how small or how big we are. I was talking with Fisher yesterday, and they have a great one, is having an incident response plan. Just knowing what your small, even if it's a small IT shop, just knowing what you're gonna do when things start going bad in your environments, right? And this doesn't necessarily go for cyber, it could be for physical. Just know what you're gonna do when something's going wrong. Really basic hygiene stuff. If you have infrastructure that you know needs patched, patch it, right? I talk about attack surface awareness, right? Could you imagine living in a house not knowing how many doors you have, right? I guarantee you, I'm not trying to sound adversarial, but I guarantee you folks in here that are responsible for their IT infrastructure don't necessarily know how many assets, how many computers, how many servers they have, or that are interconnected, right? And it's the way we've grown so fast, right? Knowing what is in your house is important so you know how to protect it, right? We use the analogy of pets and cows, okay? So pets, right? I have a dog, female Weimaraner. She's the laziest dog in the world. She's only 4. Fortunately and unfortunately, she's a part of our family, right? She gets sick, I take care of her, right? I gotta take care of her, right? It's kind of like IT infrastructure. If it's sitting in your house and it goes bad, you gotta take care of it. You can't just get rid of it, per se. If I got a cow, right? If a cow gets sick, what do? Shoot the damn thing, right? So you have steak. That sounds bad. Okay, don't quote me on that. But the point being is that you sell the cow or you do something else with the cow, right? You don't have an emotional attachment to it. P, pet, is for premises in your house. C, cow, is for cloud, right? Put the risk gets attained to either Microsoft or AWS. So we're really trying to, it's more of an evangelistic movement to a lot of folks that are preaching that please, this is the direction folks need to be going. It really is going to reduce a lot of risk. So finally, 10 things you can read up here today, right? A lot of this stuff probably doesn't pertain to some of you folks, but backups, right? One of the biggest things I see when we did large-scale incident response, we would go and their main systems were completely hosed. And oh, by the way, their backup systems were interconnected directly to their business systems. And what happened to their backup systems? Those were hosed as well, right? So really basic hygiene of separating your backup systems. So if you do have your main systems compromised, you have something safe to go to. And then change how you do business, right? Understand how you were attacked. Don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed, right? Even this is at your home too, right? Just don't be embarrassed or shy if something did go wrong. Understand how it happened. This is with my teenagers all the time, right? They click stuff they're not supposed to click. I've rebuilt some of their Chromebooks too many times, right? Let me tell you, teenage boys, I know where those clicks came from. It sucks being them. They think I have the most advanced security. I have a couple patents with AI, and they think I have the most advanced security systems on our home stuff. I don't. I don't want to. It's like a dentist going home and doing dental work. I have no interest in doing that. But they think there is. They think there's cameras in the house that they don't know about. So, I remember when they discovered Google and they Googled me, and it was like my face turned red, and they're like, "You do what?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." And I was like, I said, keep an eye on what you do on those devices, right? And it's, kids will come to our house, they won't connect to our Wi-Fi. It's awesome. It's so awesome. And I've coached most of these kids since they were 4 years old, and I just kind of walk around and I'm like, what's up? And they're like, I can't, in our house, our signal's horrible in our house. Anyways, so I could start telling all kinds of interesting use case stories and some war stories. I know we're running out of time, and I know the end part of this is very, it's very kind of business-like, right? Of how understanding, how to just use best practices, staying healthy. But it is important. It really is from a business revenue standpoint. This is the last thing you guys want to be going through when you're trying to grow your business. It is the last. I've seen it. I've seen CEOs crumble. I've seen businesses just fail because they weren't ready for it. They were in a growth phase that their margins were so thin, and they got hit, and that's their family. That's their livelihood was gone. And nothing you can do about it. It's just because some jerk, in Hungary is trying to make $5,000, right? And a whole life's work is gone. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. That's what's going on right now. It's real heavy, serious on the Russia side, but trust me, most nation states have, I won't get into too many of them, but most nation states have those that are not friendly with us, have those capabilities and are doing those things. So it's about being vigilant, keeping your shields up. I saw a hand go up. Yes, you got it. So he asked, what is the next emerging nation state, right? It's coming back. It all depends what happens in Iran, okay? So I fought against, when I went to Bank of America, that's out in the open now, with the oil sanctions that were going on, or the sanctions were going on against Iran. They started hitting our financial infrastructure with denial of service attacks. Worked for 3 months straight, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, because there wasn't good, what we call redundancy internet networks, right? Because our networks were going down. They'd start on a Tuesday, and they would hit Wells Fargo 1 hour. They'd hit Bank of America in the next hour, all the big banks, and then they just would repeat the next day. And it sucked to be the first bank, right? And this was all attributed to Iran after the fact, and they were really good at it. But it sucked to be the first bank because you took the hit, but then you would collect all the intelligence, the stuff that was coming at you, and we would share it. We get on calls and they start sharing it with the other banks, and then we would put our shields up because we would be blocking against those attacks. But everybody took a hit in the jaw every week because you were the first one that week until our technology got better. We worked with the ISPs to be able to fail over very quickly. So Iran is definitely out there. North Korea, absolutely, and they're sitting there quiet right now. Sony picture hacks, right? They're more emotionally, politically motivated than they are for more, intelligence gathering. And China's always going to be there, but it's not emerging. But I would say if I had to really label it out there, it would be North Korea and Iran right now. So, any other questions? I like that. Thanks. Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope this was beneficial, somewhat entertaining, and you can take something back. Again, this is something that DHS CISA is saying. I think it's developing into a hashtag Shields Up. I loved it when I saw it. I wish I had come up with the name. But again, thank you so much for your time. Really, this has been a great event. Hope to be invited back again as well. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for the engaging opening keynote, Patrick. Nothing to get your morning conference juices flowing than having the caffeine scared out of you. Yeah. Good old Vlad. I like it.
Sorry for all the teenagers in this room.
Well, I was texting my wife as you were sharing some of your stories. Gotta get our shield up, so thank you for that keynote. We're gonna roll right into a break, a networking break. Make sure you take advantage of that. At 10:15, we'll have our first seminar. And if you're tired of hearing me, please download the app. It is the best guide to today's conference. We will also at 10:15 hear again from Chris Taylor, and he's going to share with us his 5 lessons learned transforming company culture. So we'll see you back here at 10:15 or at one of the seminar rooms.